Did you know that now you can have your favorite greens delivered right to your front door? Thanks to Duke City Dank Delivery, getting high-quality cannabis has never been easier. No more trips to the dispensary. Just sit back, relax, and let Duke City Dank Delivery bring the good times to you swiftly and discreetly. So whether you're chilling at home or hosting friends, Duke City Dank Delivery has got you covered. You can find them on weed maps in your Albuquerque area. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Greenhouse, the place where conversations take root and good vibes are always growing. I'm Judy, and I will be your moderator today. Today we're going to be focusing on innovations in the cannabis industry, specifically focusing on aeroponics. We have an amazing panel with us today. We have Mr. Bruce Granger. He's our Aeroponics SME. We have Matt Rocco right here. He's from Always Aeroponics here in Albuquerque. And right here to my left, we have Mr. Matt Kennicott, who grows cannabis traditionally. Welcome, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Great to be here.
So, Bruce, Matt, and Matt, so thanks for joining us today. Let's kick off with some introductions. Can each of you tell me a little bit about yourselves? We'll go ahead and start with you, Matt. Maybe you can even let us know how you got into the cannabis industry.
Yeah. So I'm the owner and operator of a cannabis cultivation and manufacturer here called Always Aeroponics, and we grow all of our cannabis fully aeroponically, and we grow some of the best weed in the state. I kind of got into this, before I started this business in 2019. Honestly, I'd never grown a plant in my life.
Oh, wow.
I came in with a background of software engineer. I was a senior level software engineer for about a decade, building virtual reality training systems for the military. And I just saw one of my friends from my hometown. I'd been a cannabis connoisseur for a while. He started growing up in Oregon and just was crushing it in his business and had nothing but good things to say about the industry. Kind of got me interested into doing it, and here we are. When we kind of went down this venture, I took an extreme engineering approach. I kind of evaluated all ways of growing. We did it all. We did soil, living soil, deep water culture, cocoa, drain to waste, kind of all side by side in a clean room environment, and the aeroponic grow systems just exploded. And it's a little bit more, I kind of call it, with aeroponics, you're a scientist. It's kind of the evolution from being a farmer to a scientist. The systems are pretty complicated. I wouldn't recommend it for any novice grower. You need a crew that's trained on the systems, good SOP, and you got to execute, and there's no room for error. If your roots of your plants are literally dangling in air with no substrate, they're just getting misted with a fine nutrient-rich solution at different intervals, and it's like life in the fast lane. It's like the Ferrari of cannabis. If your systems have an error, you have 4 hours pretty much to respond, and it is what it is, But on the flip side of that, it is the best cannabis I've ever smoked or seen, smelled. We get prime colas about the size of an ounce.
Oh, wow.
And we're actually releasing a special prime cola series soon where it's just that trimmed up. We don't break up the bud, and just a massive Mylar bag that, pretty unique to the market. Good prime cola collection. And it's just been a really great experience. And
Wonderful.
And I kind of got introduced to Bruce, so that he's kind of been a consultant in our back pocket and a guiding arm and everything, and has generously shared a ton of cultivation knowledge and really hasn't asked for much in return. And glad to say he's a good friend of mine now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's pretty awesome. We agree.
So I started in the business about 14 years ago, as I've said before, and one of my first clients, actually my first client as a consultant, was a professor at University of Syracuse, and he wanted to grow aeroponically. And I had a friend of mine who was the vice president of Essence Grows, and I called him up and I said, listen, what do you pay for a referral for a lead I've got for you? And he said, what do you mean? I thought you own FlexMod. I said, no, I don't own FlexMod anymore. I'm a consultant. And he said, no, I think you're going to come work for me. And I said, no, I like my consulting gig. And he said, I'll make you a deal. I'll pay you a salary and you can continue to be a consultant. And so So I get my leads from Essence, and I work those leads for Aeroponics, and if the client can't afford it, I'll try to sell them something else. But I tell you, as Matt just said, it's akin to a Ferrari. Ferraris have an internal combustion engine. Excuse me, they used to. Now they just come out with an electric hybrid. But anyway, but that engine is tuned, and everything is exactly at its tolerance level. And every piece of that is running at 99% of tolerance in order to get the performance that a Ferrari gets. And truthfully, as Matt just said, that's kind of what Aeroponics is. Everything is running as fast as it can. If you do it correctly, you can take a 58-day grow schedule and finish it in about 51 days. So shaving off 10% of the time that it takes to grow the plant, because everything is happening so fast. People always ask me, can I get increased production? Not really, that's genetics. You're not going to get more growth. You might get a little bit better growth, but the speed at which the plant is growing is much faster and really efficient. But it is intensive that you've got to pay attention to the plant at all times. And because even if you're getting, you get a lot of alarms with the system, the alarm could actually be too late. And so,
or it could go off at midnight.
yeah, or the alarm goes off at midnight. It's you've got to be dedicated to the system. Whereas with dirt, at the end of the day, you can make mistakes with dirt.
We can make a lot of mistakes
Right.
with dirt.
You can make a lot of mistakes with dirt, right?
Yeah.
And even if you've made a massive mistake with dirt, you can flush it out, and you can get rid of whatever you've screwed up with your nutrients, get it back to zero, and start all over again. With Aeroponics, unfortunately, it is what it is. You feed it, and the plants take it up, and it is immediate. There's really no buffer, but it's a fast and an economic system, because you have no substrate, you don't have any repotting costs. Those things, is a benefit. It's an interesting way of growing.
Absolutely, it is. And I'm as far as getting into the industry, I actually started on the policy side of things, 2006, 2007, around when the Lit Air and Compassionate Use Act was passed. And I've worked policy the entire time, but I've also been kind of an indoor tent grower for that amount of time. And as far as commercially growing, I'm a baby, especially compared to these guys. After this season, I'll have a couple under my belt. We actually started as a salt grow. We were growing in a neutral medium, peat and perlite, and feeding those plants every single day. And it's interesting. Salt growing is interesting. Drain to waste, you're basically just flushing it out every single day. And we were getting 15, 16 foot tall plants with massive colas. Fun to look at. But for us down on our farm in Socorro, we've decided to move towards a more sustainable way of growing, at least for us, with living soil. So we're transitioning our farm over to living soil. We're not just doing it on the cannabis side of things, but for the entire farm. We really want to regenerate what we've got there, and provide some good quality, clean, organic bud to the market.
Matt, I'm sorry, but could you explain to the audience what living soil is? Because that's
living soil.
It's an interesting thing.
Yeah, it's much more different than aeroponics or even hydroponics, because literally you have everything for your plant living right there in your soil. All your microorganisms, all of your fertilizers, if you will, is all right there in the soil. Now we will amend with things like bone meal or other minerals if we're finding any kind of deficiencies. But really, it's stick the plant in the pot or in your soil and water, and just pay attention to what it needs.
So bottom line is your soil that you're growing in, you've augmented it with everything from potash to bone meal to sheep sheep shit, excuse
shit,
me,
yep.
in order to put the nitrogen in it.
Yeah.
And all of that stuff is in the soil already.
That's
and
right.
by adding water, you basically are releasing all of those nutrients that you've put into the soil,
Yep.
and you don't have to add nutrients anymore because it's actually already in the soil.
Exactly.
It's an interesting way of growing.
Yeah,
And,
and
you got
long
the living part in it too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I used to think worms were kind of gross, creepy crawlies, but after doing a living soil grow, I'm like, oh, those are my homies.
Vermiculture, yeah. It's, we actually, so we've got 6 acres that we have for our entire farm. About 3 of that is dedicated to cannabis. The rest we're putting in an orchard and a regular veggie garden. But we're carrying the same practices over across the entire farm, including vermiculture, where we just recently received a USDA grant to do some demonstration projects with vermiculture. So having
That's
those worms
awesome.
there is
Yeah,
like those guys provide.
I've heard living
great
soil
food.
people saying that you set it up right, it can last for years.
For years.
You just replace the plant, like
Yeah,
set it and
pretty
forget
much.
it as much as you can get. You
Pretty
get
much.
watering.
Yep, and we're
right.
we're also going no-till, so meaning once we do get into the native soil, we're not going to continuously till that over and over and over again, because what that does is it really destroys the biome living there in the native soil. So no-till, you maybe go over once, pass over with a light till, and then the rest we're amending with compost and all the other fun, good living soil stuff.
That's awesome.
So Matt, I would just to tell you, I watched a documentary on no-till farming, and it was really an interesting documentary because they had 2 farms, and he had a relatively small farm. It was like 30 or 40 acres.
Yeah.
And the farm across the street was a traditional Monsanto grow.
Yep.
And what he said was that he was actually more profitable with the no-till soil than the Monsanto. And the reason being was his production was down, so he produced less product.
Yep.
But because his cost going into it was so highly reduced, he made more money.
That's one of the great things that we're looking at is reduction in cost. In cost with living soil. You go from feeding pounds and pounds and pounds of salts or commercial fertilizers
Right.
a day, and this applies in the commercial veggie market too, for any commercial farm.
Right.
Very costly, but for us right now, our initial inputs, our initial amendments are what's going to cost us the most. And then over time, that's significantly reduced because eventually what we're hoping the soil does is really takes care of itself with very little human input to take care of it.
You know, I'm not a religious guy,
Yeah.
but God gave us everything we need.
That's right.
That's what
We
I was
just
gonna
always
say.
keep continuously
That's right.
screw it up, or Monsanto continuously
Yeah.
screws it up for us.
Exactly.
Telling us that, oh, if you use Roundup, you'll get less pests, and we can plant more, and then use my nutrients, and you can do that, and then buy my seeds, and you'll do better.
Right.
It's not really true.
No, it's not. In this industry too, I think there's room for all of us, however we want to grow.
Right.
I would say that I'm more on the farmer side as opposed to the scientist side.
Right.
I do come from an agricultural family, so it feels like it fits, and I've seen that big commercial side of things because my grandfather grew corn and soybeans on thousands of acres, and he was using those harsh inputs too. And, God bless him. He taught me a lot about my work ethic, but there are, I think, other ways to do this and much healthier for the earth.
That was
Much healthier for the earth.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you read of all the horrors about Roundup,
Yeah.
and you think to yourself, really? So this
Right.
is good for you?
Right,
I'm not
exactly.
quite getting that.
Yeah, well, that's where I think aeroponics is great too, because it's not, you don't have all these harsh chemicals coming at it, and as long as you're doing the science right, what you're feeding it really benefits the plant and helps it come out clean and really good medicine.
And then kind of on top of the aeroponics, we kind of do like a clean room design. We have positive pressure, no pests can get into any hole anywhere, so we don't spray anything on our plants, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is something that's intended for human inhalation. Pesticides, if you can avoid it, you should, right?
Yeah.
But,
Yep.
they exist in nature.
They do.
Yeah.
And we don't actually we're not using any pesticides or anything. We're using companion plants, marigolds, probably some garlic and onion here and there.
You guys do basil at all?
Basil is definitely something that we're going to do.
We've been reading some research.
Yeah.
They help increase terpene production
Yeah.
of plants around it, which that's what you're tasting in cannabis is the
100%.
terpenes.
That's one of the reasons I like growing outdoors too, especially in New Mexico, because We've obviously got the best power source in the world with the sun, and that sun helps, produce. I think a more broad array of terpenes and probably a stouter terpene profile than you would necessarily get indoors. And there's been some studies showing that, but again, there's different uses for the flower depending on how it's produced, and there's room for all of it. So
Well,
it's great.
and it's interesting you say that, because most of the research I've been doing, on UVA, UVB, and far red, those are really interesting because there's not a lot of science on it yet.
Right.
But the initial notice is that it's very helpful, and guess what? You get that all from the sun.
That's right.
All from the sun.
That's exactly
And
right.
so-
the plants can't absorb the far red unless there's enough CO2
Right.
to help it, and you're not going to get that outdoors.
Yeah,
It's true.
That's also true.
That's also true.
Yeah.
But I mean, so there's also, like you said, there's pros and cons about
100%.
everything. At the end of the day, as I always say, it's a weed, and no matter what you do, it'll grow.
It's gonna grow. Yeah.
You may not want to smoke it, but it'll grow.
And there's uses, edibles, distillate is something we're really interested in now, and it doesn't matter what you start with. You should, if your process is right, end up with a tasteless, odorless goop that's just pure THC, and that's what's in a lot of the edibles, the vape pens, and people love them.
They sure do.
Yeah.
Especially those edibles.
We've started making infused pre-rolls with it, so we take our Aeroponic weed and tumble it in a slow heated infusion with some cannabis oil. They test around 40 to 50% a joint, but by far our top seller. And
Very nice.
yeah, people love them.
And Bruce, can you, just to kind of give some more education on exactly what is aeroponics? Maybe you can kind of
Well,
break
as-
that down.
Sure. Well, as Matt said, basically we're growing in air. So if you look at a plant, everybody thinks plants breathe CO2. That's really only true during photosynthesis, and it's only true at the leaf level. The roots of a plant always breathe oxygen. So the worst medium for breathing oxygen literally is dirt, because it confines the roots and it makes it difficult. Now obviously, the bacteria breaks down the organic material, creating oxygen in the soil. But if you look at where is the oxygen most available, so people grow in hydroponics, in water. You can only saturate water with about 17-18% oxygen max. Well, our air has about 23-24% oxygen. So we're going to give it the most oxygen in the air. The roots will get the most oxygen in the air. So that's the concept behind aeroponics. The second piece is giving it exactly what it needs when it needs it. So obviously the plants, on average, you got an 8-week growth cycle. It needs different nutrients based on where you are in that growth cycle. With aeroponics, I can literally fine tune that because I'm spraying it directly on the roots. With dirt, with cocoa and other mediums, it takes a little while for that nutrient to actually get to the roots. With aeroponics, it's immediate. So I can change my recipe to coincide with its needs as you need it. The other thing with aeroponics is not only do we control the nutrients that are being delivered to the plant, but also the length of time that I water it. So I can water it for 2 minutes, have it dry for 5 minutes, water it again, and I can create that cycle or that recipe depending on where we are within the growth cycle. It becomes, as Matt said, it becomes a science. Mm-hmm. Like, when do I grow? When do I water? How long do I water? How long is the dry cycle? Mm-hmm. In the beginning, you have a little bit longer dry cycle because you want those roots to look for water. So if you let it dry a little bit longer in between watering cycles, then the roots are going to look for water. They'll get more root growth. So you really tailor your watering cycle, your drying cycle, the nutrients all get tailored really, really precisely with aeroponics. The other thing is that if you're looking at cost savings, so unlike living soil, because living soil you plant it, but he still has to do veg, mm-hmm. he still has to do cloning, yep. And all of those processes take a substrate. With aeroponics, we do a cutting, we put it into a disc that holds the stem of that plant, and we clone it. We then veg it in that same spot. So we don't have any substrate. So I don't have to replant it. When I had my grow, I actually did a time study. Not that it takes a long time, but if I go from a clone to a veg to put it into let's say a 4 inch by 4 inch pot, takes about 8 to 12 seconds. I got 800 of them. Add that, it adds up to time. Now I go from a veg plant to a flowering pot. That could take 20 seconds to move all that soil, fill it up, put the plant in there. Do that by 800. You got a full day that you just spent. In aeroponics, I literally take it out of one machine, put it into another machine. That's my transplant. There is no repotting, so I save all of that labor cost.
But there's the cleaning of the equipment. That's next to godliness.
So, and Matt has gone through a number of iterations learning about the cleaning process. And quite honestly, that's the problem with aeroponics or hydroponics. You've got a lot of water moving through tubes that create sludge, which creates bacteria. And if you're not cleaning that all and making sure that your environment, your water transportation systems are clean and sterile, you get problems.
In between every grow, we disassemble every piece of plumbing, scrub it all down, even like the little O-rings, take them off, scrubbing around them, and it's a process, but you got to do it. You have a lot of living organisms in there sharing one water supply, and they kind of all act as one giant plant at that point.
Yeah.
And the other issue is, and you're touching on that really, the problem is now I've got a problem on one plant. That problem now gets mitigated to everything in the system. So you're literally sharing disease. It's,
But if you're checking it a couple times a day and you notice that right away, it's not a problem. You can take that out and.
You're right, but it again, it's a labor issue. You've got to be watching that plant. And Matt, to your point, there's a lot of ways to grow.
Yeah.
Each of them has its own problems.
That's right.
And its own benefits.
Yep.
Well, and speaking of which, that's what I was just going to ask you. So we've got to hear the benefits and the challenges of aeroponics. What about soil use? The soil growing.
There's so many. Well, and we grow outdoors too in living soil. So we've got all of the environmental challenges that any farmer faces, whether it's the weather, either being too hot, and we've got to water the plants several times a day to keep them nice and strong and healthy, or hailstorms. That's something that we have to worry about. Pests. We're supposed to get a giant grasshopper infestation this summer.
The cicadas too.
Cicadas as well. It's a 100-year cicada cycle.
Right.
So we're going to be dealing with a lot of very different environmental challenges outdoors. The stresses on the plants outside are a lot different as well. Whether that's again from pests or weather or whatever you have going on at the time.
And this plant, I was just going to say, this plant is a really strange plant because a little bit of stress is good because it creates more terpenes and more cannabinoids because the plant is trying to attract things by creating the smell. The problem is too much stress.
Right.
The plant actually does hermaphrodite.
It does, and we've got to be very mindful of that.
And so too much stress, well, it's very bizarre, but the plant will act. So what we all want to do is we all want to grow female plants. That's the game. But if under stress, and there's a lot of issues that cause stress, but under stress, the plant will literally go hermaphrodite to a male plant to produce spores to feed the female plant, and nobody wants. Well, if any of you are old-time pot smokers, you know that when you used to buy weed, you got a ton of seeds.
Lots of seeds. It's that
And
magical pot.
we don't want to sell seeds anymore. Nobody wants to get the seeds out of there anymore, and so obviously we want to keep the plants from hermaphroditing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's. we're touching our plants every day and looking at them every day, pulling bugs off them if we need to. But the labor is intensive on a soil grow or an outdoor grow as well. Just just different. You know, our infrastructure is definitely different as well. We're completing building a greenhouse just for our veg space alone. We'll set up another greenhouse just for cloning. So you know, the infrastructure is different, and it's definitely up front probably fairly costly compared to other methods. But on the positive side, we get to be outdoors all day. I'm starting to get nice and tan again. You know, it's nothing like the New Mexico sunshine to
So what do
make
you
things
do
great.
to, because the plant literally will start to shut down at about 90 some odd degrees. So what do you do in order to keep the plant from shutting down?
Yeah.
Now, I ask this because I've only done indoor growing.
Yeah,
I don't know anything about outdoor
Right.
growing.
Yeah.
So I'm asking this question not to lead you on, but to get
No, not at all.
to get educated. How do you keep the plant?
There's a couple of things that we do on our farm. One, obviously, water first thing in the morning helps keep the roots nice and cool and helps keep our pots nice and cool and healthy. We're also going to be using cover crop not just in our rows, but which will help with soil and water retention and everything else. But it also helps cool the ambient temperature down, having that greenery there. Doing the same thing in our pots. We're going to be using things like marigolds for cover crop inside of our pots. And then we also use shade cloth.
Oh, you do?
So yeah, we put shade cloth up to really help with the temperature. We get hailstorms down in Socorro, so we want to protect from that hail a little bit. So we use a couple of different things to kind of help.
So you put up
mitigate.
shade cloth over the plants?
We do, yeah. It's like I can't remember what percentage
Sure.
is, but you know, we still get a ton of light on the plants. And
right.
It'll they'll still explode.
Well, no, I mean, so you
the-
I mean, when you in a greenhouse, I've done 20 or 30% shade
Yep.
cloth. So you're doing the same thing outside.
Yep, the same thing, exact same thing outside. And then later in the day, if it's super hot, like down there, we get 105, 110 degree days for weeks
And
straight.
really dry too.
Yeah, really
which
dry. We'll do
The heat
supplemental
and the
waters.
dryness is a terrible
It's
vapor
horrible.
pressure deficit for growing plants.
Horrible.
You got to do something. Yeah.
Yeah, so we need to compensate for our weather more than anything, and it involves a lot more water and keeping a very close eye on how they're behaving out there.
The sun out here, I don't know if it's the elevation, but it is intense. I'm a bit of a
Yeah.
data nerd. I have a PAR meter, which
Oh, yeah.
measures the photoflux
Yep.
density in the light, and I get about 1,800, 2,000 out here on a real nice
Yeah.
sunny
Oh,
day,
wow.
which is
Yeah.
more than most LED lights will put out already.
It's a combination of altitude because we're thinner, we're closer to the sun actually, thinner atmosphere. All of those things contribute here. And
No,
it's,
well,
So
moisture
actually, I
in
can
the
tell you. So closer to the sun is not really the case. It's you said it first.
Yeah, it's
the
the
atmosphere is thinner
Yeah.
because we're actually we're 6,000 feet above sea
Yeah,
level
that's true.
with the what's it called the amount of atmosphere. What it's like 200,000 feet.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're a couple of percentage points of that.
We are.
So that's the difference. It's
So I burn a lot easier.
right, because the atmosphere is,
Yeah.
is thinner. So just out of curiosity, so you put up the shade cloth.
Yeah.
You have to put that up, take it down, or you leave it up.
We'll leave it up the entire season until it's time to harvest. There's really no harm to the plants or deficits
Right,
to the
there's
plants
not
at
much-
all.
you're not-
It's-
wow.
And it adds that extra layer of I don't know, peace of mind. I
Sure, a little bit of
guess.
protection, right? No.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I said, I've never done an outdoor grow. I only know indoor grow.
And
which-
the scale outdoors is big too. You know, we're right now we're in 150 gallon pots, 10-foot T posts holding up the trellis netting and the shade cloth. So the scale is definitely large. Our garden, which right now is 400 pots, which will eventually transfer to raised beds, takes up about 2.25 acres. So it's very like I said, the scale is large, and it looks different outdoors than it does indoors too, because these plants are just massive.
Light going around it all day, and they stretch in
Yep.
that direction and then that
Just follow
direction.
that
and,
direction. You know, our first harvest there, we had 15, 16-foot plants, and we pulled out 500 pounds. So it was a good harvest.
Are you guys able to move all that in the market?
Yeah.
Or yeah.
Yep. So aside from the farm, my girlfriend and partner Veronica and I also have a wholesale business with our company, High Maintenance. And we've spent the last 2.5 years traveling the state, just getting to know retailers and manufacturers and everybody else. And we not only sell our product, but we work with probably 5 other farms and about 3 or 4 manufacturers on the wholesale side of things too.
Awesome.
So we spend a lot of time out there developing relationships.
We're
Awesome.
kind of in the same boat. One connection we made recently is partnering with this transportation company. They've been great for us.
Know
But
Tim
now
really well.
we were making deliveries ourselves out to Tucumcari, and it was kind
Holy
of
smokes.
things like that as a pay. But there, it's like $25 for a little bin, and
Yeah.
no problems.
Yeah.
It's been a great
Waffle's
service to
great.
use. Yeah.
Yep. No, it's very good stuff. But yeah, it's part of the licensing and consulting that I have done. We've been to facilities all over the state, probably seen a couple hundred facilities at this point. Once you've seen one, you've seen one.
They're all unique.
So they're all, everything is
Different.
unique and different.
Yeah, it's amazing how people truly don't understand. What I tell people all the time is spend your money on your environment. If you don't get your environment right, temperature and humidity, I don't care how you grow, you'll fail.
Right.
So spend your money on your environment, get your environment correct, and then what you have money left over, we'll figure out how to grow. But don't come to me and tell me here's how I want to grow, and I don't have enough. All I can do is mini splits.
Yeah.
No, you'll fail.
Right. Exactly.
Or you'll be pumping a ton of humidity into your room.
Yeah.
But
Well, the knowledge is out there too, and it's you don't necessarily have to pay a lot for it, or really anything. What we're doing at our farm this year is we put together actually a little co-op. We've got enough room for 3 of us to grow out there, so we've got our farm. We've got another and 2 other micro grows. They're going to be growing the same method, different genetics, but we're all sharing labor, we're sharing costs and everything. But it also helps increase our knowledge because these 2 guys are living soil growers, and they're going to be able to help transfer a ton of knowledge to me, where I'll be able to help transfer a ton of knowledge on the licensing and compliance and all the fun stuff that we have to do. So, but the
Biotrack,
knowledge is
man.
out there.
Right.
Oh yeah,
The biotrash. I finally fully got switched over to Dutchy. It's been a godsaver. Like I could not run my manufacturing business with biotrash.
Yeah, it's rough.
And Dutchy makes API calls behind the scene to Biotrack. So I'm still using Biotrack as the state mandates. It's just I don't get kicked out every 45 minutes. I complained to the state. They said, "Well, you're on the free version. You get to the paid version. $14,000 up front and then $900 a month." It seems like a scam to me, dude. They make the platform so terrible that it takes us 2 days to enter and harvest. Where like internal record keeping, like an hour maybe, right?
So let me ask you something, Matt. We talked about consumer impact as far as, growing and taste and the terpenes. How do you feel that really, kind of the quality of the aeroponics versus like a traditional, is there really a difference? Or like we talked about earlier, I know, cannabis is cannabis. What are you really finding? What are you hearing from your...
There's genetics plays a huge role in it, but we have our flower terpene are testing at 3 to 4% terpenes, which is really high, and you can taste it, you can smell it as soon as you open the jar and everything. So it's there. Yeah,
It's there.
It's there. And we're still kind of getting started. I'm sure we could fine tune this for the rest of our business, and that's part of the game, right?
Right. Yep. And Bruce, so what are your thoughts on how the growing methods really end, like that, lead to that end product?
I guess, as we said earlier, and Matt just said, the genetics play probably the biggest part of all.
Yeah.
And I think, at the end of the day, a good grow methodology will always work. What produces better terpenes and better cannabinoids? I'm not sold that anything makes that big of a difference. I think the Aeroponics does tend to bring out a little bit more terpene, but I'm not sure about that. I mean, it's really hard to compare, because if you look at living soil, for instance, you're really giving it the greatest opportunity to absorb as much as possible from the soil. I really think it's a genetic issue. I think it's not just the medium that you're growing in, but how often do you water? How much do you water? All of these things play a huge role in your end product. And I really haven't seen great studies. I mean, at the end of the day, this is all so new, and we're still at a point where studies are still difficult. You know, I mean, we can have growers do studies, but at the end of the day, are they really doing a scientific study?
Right.
Are they really measuring? Okay, this is a cup and a half of water. This is a pint of water. This is, you know, I mean, it really takes that kind of diligence to really do a side by side comparison.
I think probably the best one I've done, and I think this Aeroponic company probably has the best scientific knowledge of it, is a Baltic Freya. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They have a amazing white paper out where they compared all types of different hydroponics and how the roots look. So, you know, deep water culture, you got one massive taproot coming down, low micron aeroponics. It just kind of exploded, which the systems we're using right now are kind of our high micron, low pressure. So the plants respond a lot to the size of the water droplets, right? The roots can absorb the lower micron water droplets way easier. And you just, because, you know, when you're growing like this, you can lift up the tub and see how your roots are growing, and it's just massive, the differences. But
I for the consumer, I think at the end of the day, most consumers wouldn't know if it's grown outdoors, aeroponically, hydroponic, whatever. I think that matters more
marketing
to
ring, too.
The grower. Yeah.
as
That's what
kind
I
of
asked.
plant nerds and cannabis nerds in general.
Well,
But even then, like I've got great admiration for every grower, because we all face our different challenges and struggles, and you know, we're all just trying our best at the end of the day to put out excellent fire for people. So.
getting into it, I was a little worried about market saturation, but
Yeah.
now going through it, not worried at all.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it takes a special person to figure out how to run an operation.
Hell
you
yeah,
know?
it does. Absolutely.
Well, and I think a lot of it is marketing.
Yeah.
I hate to say it.
No,
but
it is.
I think a lot of it is marketing. Like, you'll find somebody who, aeroponics, they've read about aeroponics. That's the best way to grow. So you market aeroponics, those people are going to buy your aeroponic because they believe that that's the best. Then you have somebody else who reads about living soil. Oh, it's grown all naturally, it's perfect. It'll give us the best terpene profile. I'm going to buy nothing but living soil. In my mind, there's enough room for everybody. And at the end of the day, and I do also think that the other problem is that there's kind of this race to the bottom.
Yeah,
People
big
want,
time.
everyone's looking for cheap.
Yep.
And unfortunately, I think there is a place for that connoisseur brand, but it's probably a pretty small percentage of the people who are out there looking.
So far, I think. I also think the market's starting to and will further bifurcate. I think really what we're going to see down the road is like your really big guys, the big box stuff, your Schwaz type companies, and then you have the kind of the connoisseur, almost like the beer market ended up shaping
I was
up.
just about to say
Very
the craft
similar
beer
to the beer
market.
market.
Yeah.
So I made that, I use that analogy quite
Yeah.
often, because if you look at Coors, Miller, Budweiser, they own about 70% of the beer market.
Right.
It's cheap beer.
Yep.
You can buy a lot of it. And 30%, you walk into your liquor store and they've got aisles and aisles of craft beer, and then $9 and $10 for a 6-pack.
Right.
It doesn't sell like those three brands, but those connoisseurs, I'm a beer snob. I am. I buy expensive brown ale. I like that, and I won't drink Miller.
Yeah.
I just won't drink it.
Yep.
But at the same time, there are a mass amount of consumers out there that want $90 ounces, like you said, Schwaz. I know that company very well.
Yeah.
They're selling $90 ounces, and they blow it out. They do almost no.
Yep.
Well, they do no curing. They
Right.
speed dry it,
Right.
and it's machine trimmed and out the door. and they sell a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of weed goes out their door.
People just want to get high.
That's it. That's right. They don't care what it tastes like.
Right.
They don't care what it tastes
But
like.
I'd say we're all connoisseurs sitting here.
You're right.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I don't want to smoke that.
Right.
If it doesn't taste good, if it doesn't have a good aroma, I want all of it's like a good wine, and it's the terpenes in the wine that we do. You know, it's like a good wine. People want to have that smell. They want that aroma. They want all of those the myrcenes and all those terpenes that give them that smell that they love.
Right.
I'm the same way about weed.
Yep.
I mean, I don't care about wine, but I'm the same way about weed.
Exactly. Wine gives me heartburn. So.
Yeah, I just don't like the way it tastes. But it's the same terpenes.
Yep, exactly.
Doesn't make any difference. It's the same terpenes.
And, we do a little bit of craft beer brewing on the side, and one thing we've started doing is actually adding terpenes from cannabis into our brews.
Oh, wow.
So we have a
Awesome.
Jack Herer IPA. It's just for fun in my garage, whatever.
That's
But
very cool.
yeah, they've turned out really well.
Do you I'm sorry to ask this, but can you put weed into the brewing process?
Not the weed,
Not
but the
yet.
liquid terpenes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you can.
I mean, but is there a reason why you couldn't get the cannabinoids to come out in the beer?
Well, you would probably extract it first.
Oh, I
you
see.
know, like we get our terpenes, we make bubble hash, we
Uh-huh.
put it all in a freeze dryer, and then kind of through that process, it sucks a little bit of the terpenes out,
Uh-huh.
but it easy to collect and reuse for anything.
And you put them into the beer.
You can put them into beer. You can put them into vape cartridges. We don't put any in our rosin products because we want that to be as pure as possible.
Right.
but,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. It's fun stuff.
Wow,
It's fun stuff.
So, in wrapping up this, let's give some advice to we're not in the business of gatekeeping. So, what would you guys what's some advice that you'd give somebody who's looking to get into the industry, they want to grow their own operation, whether it's aeroponics, whether it's a traditional grow, what's some advice you'd give them?
To learn the plant first before you try to go into the Ferrari, right? Like maybe
100%.
do some soil and grow some moms, take some cuttings, get that part down. That's kind of the keeping your genetics going, unless you're doing fully from seed, is pretty much the cornerstone of your operation. And knowing how the plant grows at a slower pace might be better for just knowing the maintenance, like when to trim, how to trim, and all that kind of stuff. But you want probably, if you have no idea what you're doing, a forgiving system until you learn the ropes, right?
I would say don't bite off more than you can chew to start, which is really easy to do in this industry. Very easy to do. Some people, and having worked with literally hundreds of clients across the state, some will say, "Yeah, I want to do 1,000 plants right now, and I'm going to do them outdoors." Well, do you really know what that looks like and what that entails? Because 1,000
labor.
plants outdoors, you're going to need a crew of 15, 20, maybe more people to handle that stuff. So don't bite off more than you can chew. Grow at a reasonable pace to start. That way you're setting yourself up for the best success possible.
And I would say, whatever you plan on spending, raise twice as much.
100%.
It is more expensive at every single turn that you think it's going to be, and nothing works in the time frame you think it's going to work. You can plan all you want, but nothing works as you plan. It's like building a house. It's twice as expensive and 3 times as long. And this business is incredibly capital intensive. And I've just seen so many people get halfway through their project, run out of money, and then they call me and say, "Can you sell this equipment for me?" Because they've totally misjudged what it's going to cost.
And there's a lot of politics and red tape you have to consider. Like one of our biggest bottlenecks was getting our COO with the city. The state licensed no problem really quickly, but getting everything ready with the city and their stamp just took 4 more months than we ever thought. And that's a
4
lot
months-
when you're starting a business. That's a whole grow.
Right, and I was just going to say, and
Yeah.
4 months translates into 4 months of payments
Yep.
that you have to make. And
Yep.
again, money. It's
Yep.
just, you got to plan for everything to go wrong. 4 months.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare.
Yeah, that is a
And
nightmare.
we're just looking at an empty facility. Like we could put plants in here, but there's some red tape. A checkbox has to be checked,
It's crazy.
We're so happy that you're up and running now.
It's great. It's
Yep.
getting your license is probably number one too.
Well, I'm just going to take a little aside. I've known Matt for quite some time, and he actually started growing in Colorado, and the bureaucracy where he had his property was so horrible. I mean, I actually went to a hearing with him. It was the city council was atrocious. He literally sold the property and moved to New Mexico.
But they kind of teased us. After that hearing, I was on a wait list for over a year, and at the very last moment, they changed the laws, completely outlawing our property. On something, it was them passing a moratorium happened on a secret agenda during an emergency board meeting, like no notice to the public, and then it just next day, no more marijuana licenses in Uray County.
And you spent over a year trying to get this passed and not growing. I mean, it was a disaster. And again, like I'm saying, you have no idea what to expect. And this was, you literally had gone to them before you moved.
Before I bought the property, I said, I want to grow here. I want to do this here. They said, yes, you can. We're happy to receive your application. That moratorium happened within 2 weeks. So I was busy uprooting my life. My wife and I lived in Florida at the time. Moving across the country to start a business isn't easy. So sure, maybe I missed the news article saying, "Hey, we emergency passed the moratorium." But
and on a personal note, I can just say that his wife is a saint because she moved from Florida to Colorado, stuck with him for a year while they couldn't do anything. Moved to New Mexico. She's still with him and just had a baby. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, you have no idea what to expect.
So I'm real interested on the episode you did on mothers and cannabis.
Yes. Yes. We just had that one. We just got that one done. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for sharing your insight and your expertise with us today. And thank you to the listeners for tuning in to another episode of The Greenhouse. We hope that you enjoyed our growing innovations discussion today, and stay tuned for more fun and enlightening conversations. Until next time, keep those good vibes growing and stay lifted.